All right. So we are doing a last note on the second parak, the second chapter, before we move on into the thrilling third chapter, the walls of Jerusalem. It doesn't sound thrilling, I know, but it is. You'll see. There's stuff to say. It's not just going to be a list of locations. And names, yes. Names. Can't have Ezra. They should have called this Shmos. Like I said, Ezra and you could have just called Shmos. If you're following in the Stone Tanakh, you on page 1841. I will note as well that this class is dedicated in honor of a donation to the Beit Midrash's dinner last June by Simi and Brian Kleinberg. Did you know that?
I did.
Oh, you did.
And he told you I wasn't going to be here last week.
Yes, so he said I should move it to this week.
Thank you very much, and I will thank them.
Okay.
My children, I figured.
Okay. So, remember what happened in Parak Bet, what happened in chapter 2. Before I do that, I will note the flyers that are there on the back table. Tanakh in a day. Half-hour classes, except for the opening one, that's 1 hour on Chumash. But besides that, half-hour classes all day long, covering every book in Tanakh. An introduction to the book, as well as a discussion about a theme within the book. You can see the title of each class tells you what the theme is going to be for each one. You can come to one. You can come to all of them. Same charge. It's free. There is babysitting. From 10 to 1, there is babysitting, but you have to register in advance. Email the email address on the sheet. It's going to be fun. It's going to be a very interesting day.
Are you recording it?
I expect to record audio. We will be broadcasting on Facebook Live as well. I expect. So, but I don't want to tell people that because then they don't have to be there.
Have to go.
Yeah, no, that's no good. Okay.
If you intend to come, you don't have to register.
You do not need to register. Just show up. The 24th. Sunday the 24th. Okay. So, back to Nechemiah. Parak Bet, chapter 2 began with Nechemiah not having acted on the news he got from Hanani, but then arrives the beginning of Nisan, a stall of 3 to 5 months before he has his conversation with the king. We talked about whether he planned it, like this is going to be a good day, the beginning of Nisan, because maybe it's also Nowruz, or whether he gets caught by the king and it's not intentional at all. We talked about God's hand in making the king receptive to Nehemiah's point about the city being in ruins, and the king says to him, okay, go, just tell me when you're coming back. That's the basic response of the king. So Nechemiah is all set to go. We're then introduced to his main enemy, Sanballat. Sanballat is a Samaritan, although there is Jewish identity within his family. We noted that Sanballat is the beginner of a dynasty of Sanballats who ruled the area until the time of the Greeks. The Samaritans are not happy about Nechemiah coming to build the wall. Nechemiah did his reconnaissance trip last week, right? He went around at night. He did not manage to make it the whole way around because he just couldn't navigate through the ruins. We noted that he was either observing the wall or breaking the wall, depending on whether you took it as sauver or chauver. Right? Either he is observing the wall to see what it needs, or he is actually attempting to break the wall, which Malbim understood in a very positive way. He's testing it to see how much of this can we retain versus how much are we going to have to build from scratch, which is going to play out in this chapter, in chapter 3, because we'll see that some of it they build and some they simply reinforce. So that's one way to take it. The other way to take what Nechemiah is doing, which was the sinister approach, it was great, this is Rashi's approach, is that Nechemiah is actually trying to demolish more of the wall in order to convince the Jews when they look out in the morning and they say, wow, this wall really is in ruins. And then they'll go along with him and the plan to rebuild it. So we saw at the end of the chapter, sentences 19 and 20, page 1841, we saw Sanballat's response to this. Sanballat and his friends, Tovia and Geshem, we talked about them last week. And it said, Vayal igulanu, they mocked us, Vayivzu aleinu, they heaped scorn on us. Vayomru, and they said, Ma davar ze asher atem osim, what is this that you're doing? Hal melech atem modim, are you rebelling against the king? You think you're going to build defenses and now you're going to be able to revolt against the king? But that's really an allegation that the Jews are doing this without proper authority. And it's a real threat, because Sanballat, again, is the governor of Shomron. Right? The governor of Samaria. He has power. He has clout. These people here, Tovia Ha'eved Ammoni and Geshem Ha'arvi, we talked about them as well, seem to be people with some authority as well, coming to Nechemiah and really issuing a threat. But Nechemiah's response is, go away. That's his answer. The last pasuk, the last sentence in the parak said, "Va'ashivo some davar," and I answered them, and I told them, "Va'omar lahem," I said to them, "Elokei hashamayim hu yatzliach lanu." The God of the heavens, He will make us succeed. Va'anachnu avadav, we are His servants. Nakum uvaninu, we are going to rise and build. And as for you, v'lachem ein chelek utzdaka v'zikaron v'Yerushalayim, you don't have any say. This is outside of your jurisdiction. This ain't Samaria, this ain't Kedar, this ain't Ammon, this is Yerushalayim, this is Judea, and you have no say in what happens here. And he says, among his lines, he says, you have no portion, and no zikaron memory, but zikaron right to say anything. But the word tzedakah is one that bothered the sages. What does it mean when you say you have no tzedakah? And it depends on how I translate the word tzedakah. How can you translate the word tzedakah? What could it mean? Justice or? Charity. Philanthropy, right? The two legitimate explanations for the word. And that determines how you translate this sentence. So Malbim says, you have no tzedakah. Tzedakah in the sense of righteousness, you have no claim that you should get credit for righteousness in this. We get the credit for righteousness in building it. It's really ours. This isn't about you. Now, they never offered to take part. This isn't like what we saw back in Ezra where the Samaritans said, we'd like to build with you. They didn't offer it. But Nechemiah is making the point, this is not your building. That's the way that Malbim reads it. Ibn Ezra, Mitzudat David, take it more along the line of philanthropy. And they say, the king gets credit for the tzedakah, for the gift that he gave us, and it has nothing to do with you. But the Yerushalmi takes it one step further. Take a look at your source sheet, please. Source number 2. Number 1 really isn't relevant to us. It's really from last week. When he says, you could accuse us of rebellion all you like, try your luck with the king. But Talmud Yerushalmi, take a look at this, because this fits into a theme that we talked about back in Ezra as well. Rabbi Chizkiah Amar Rama, Rabbi Chizkiah said, Rabbi Shimon asked, Me'ata, based on this, Ein mekablim mehen la'amas hamayim u'luchamos ha'ir u'migdaloseh. We should not accept from them, meaning we shouldn't accept contributions from the nations for water channels, for walls of a city, for towers, for guard towers, because after all, Nechemiah said, V'lachem ein chelek. That's in the translation there that I gave you, it should say 20, not 10, that's a typo. It's pasuk chaf. But Nechemiah said, you don't have a share. In other words, the way this was taken was, we say to the Samaritans, we don't want any support from you. We don't want any tzedakah from you for this building. So he takes it as a statement that we really ought not to accept things from them. Now, the truth of the matter is that we took plenty of gifts, right? Ezra came in with a whole raft of gifts for the Beis HaMikdash, and we did not, at the time, we didn't oppose that. But I think this is part of our ongoing feeling of discomfort with the gifts that we receive from the nations. We would like to view the Beis HaMikdash as, number 1, God's gift to us. And number 2, something we contribute to and we construct. In the Jewish vision of a Beis HaMikdash, the nations aren't the builders. Right? Ezra, gave them naming rights on the building, basically. Ezra said, look, you guys, and it wasn't Ezra saying it. They gave Ezra the korbanos, they gave Ezra the building materials, and it basically became a Persian government building. But we're voicing here, through Nechemiah, a discomfort with that idea. This is not really for them, this is really for us. And it's going to fit with who Nechemiah is as we see him through the book. One of the things that we're really going to see play out as we start Perek Gimel, when Nechemiah gets underway, is this sense of a do-it-yourselfer. He is going to make sure that things get done on his watch by his dictate. That's the way things are going to work. It's going to be Nechemiah making it happen. And, well, we'll see more of that in a moment. Gita.
Do you think there's any subtext that says we won't accept donations from A, B, and C, but we might from others? The way he spells it, he doesn't.
Because it's you don't have, you don't have, you don't have.
But,
yeah. Interesting idea.
I think it's opposite. I think it's this building is ours, this land is ours. It's very current.
Yes.
Oh, well, that's what
Yes, although here no one's offering us gifts.
Right. I know.
We open those before they arrive,
This is not our building, our edifice. This is our...
Right. It's an interesting twist that Gita's suggesting, but I'm inclined to read it the way that Debbie reads it, that this is ours and you guys don't belong, and nobody belongs but us. This is really, this is our sanctuary. So that's just a wrap up from Perek Bet from chapter 2. But as we start chapter 3, I gave you on the sheet the outline of 3 and 4. So the bulk of Perek Gimel is construction of the walls, which we'll see is actually, believe it or not, fascinating. And then trash talk, you'll see, as the opposition, Sanballat and crew, try to discourage the Jews, and Nechemiah responds. Then it will escalate. There will be physical battles, and Nechemiah is going to have to come up with a way to defend the workers who are trying to build, and there will be a system of guard duty set up. That's what we're going to see in 3 and 4. That's basically where things are. The themes, certainly through Perek Gimel, are the escalation coming from the opposition, and Nechemiah being unwilling to let the Jews cave in. And Nechemiah's approach is a blend. Just like it was from the beginning of the book when he approached the king, it's a blend of the practical with the religious. Now, we're going to get a detailed map here of the wall as Nechemiah leads the rebuilding. But a basic point about this is seen in Rashi. If you take a look at source number 4, we don't need to see the pasuk that he's commenting on yet. But Rashi notes something. The text is going to say... Actually, is this the Rashi that I wanted? Come to think of it. I see. No, I see what I did here. Yes, it is the Rashi that I wanted. The way that it's going to do it is it's going to say, this one built, Va'al Yado, and at his hand, this one. Va'al Yado, and at his hand, the next one. So that the way that it works, and Rashi explains it here, is Va'al Yado, Eitzel Yado, B'samuch lo. Shall call boneu boneh shabanu oso b'binyan shel shar hatzon. At his hand, near to each of the builders who built, in this case, the sheep gate. In other words, what happens is each section of the wall, and there are different ways to count the sections of the wall, but there are 40 or 42 sections that are going to be enumerated in this perek, in this chapter. But each segment of the wall is under the aegis of a particular group. You know, I think of what they do on the highways, right? Where you assign a particular group and they get to... I once called up. I wanted to find out what it would cost. I wanted to do a dedication of a section of highway, the name of the Beit Midrash, like some random place, just to see what would happen.
In the Catskills, there are many like that for yeshivas.
Really? Now, I wanted to do it in somewhere like in the middle of nowhere, just to see what would happen. But then I found out it's expensive.
Are you responsible for anything?
So it depends. There are actually 2 different types. There are some where you're a volunteer and you organize volunteers to do cleanups, and you have to do it within a certain period of time. And others, you just pay money, and you're just sponsoring the local municipal system. Yeah, but I gave up on the idea. But in terms of what's going on here, we have each section dedicated by a particular family, and it's generally speaking a family. But we spend a lot of time enumerating who does it. And so now I have to come back to the same question that we asked in Ezra regarding the name lists. Why are we going to enumerate for all time, right? The Anshe Knesset HaGedolah, canonizers of Tanakh, leave this in. Why does Nechemiah think it is appropriate? And why does this assembly in the beginning of the second Beis HaMikdash, they're not that long after Nechemiah, what makes them decide that Tanakh needs to include a detailed list of the builders? Why would you want this? I mean, look at the parak. You'll see. It's going to be very clear if you start basically at the outset, but take a fast read through, even in the English, and you can see, and this one did this, and this one did this, and this one did this, and you work your way around.
Do you think that question is any different than many of the lists of, I mean, look at Brady, like we have lists of names we see them, we would never revisit them.
Right. And the question, I think, is valid there, too.
Okay.
I think the question is appropriate there also. I think, in general, you have to ask yourself, and look, you could give one answer, which Rabbi Angel noted in the beginning of Ezra, when Ezra listed all the people who came. It wasn't his own answer, he was quoting somebody else, that this is just the way biblical poetry works. This was their aesthetic. Lists of names are interesting. And that could be. But we found more practical reasons for those names. We said it's in terms of lineage, identifying which families are okay or not okay. We said it was honoring the founders, because these are the people who were brave and they were the pioneers and they came back. We gave 5 or 6 different explanations for this, only one of which was because they thought it sounded nice. So here also, you could just say it's the style. You could suggest, I think, that it's a way to honor the builders. Yeah, right? He did put in the work.
In Winnipeg, the UJA used to put out the blue book.
Mm-hmm.
And it said, who gave, and how much.
And at what level, right?
And there was a lot of anonymous at the end. And it was horrendous. It was really horrendous.
Well, to that point, Debbie says it's horrendous when stock organizations do it, but there is a Gemara in Bava Basra which says, Gadol ha'ma'aseh yoser min ha'oseh. Better to get other people to give than to give yourself.
No.
So that was a motivator.
No, I understand the why, but there was the book and it came out. And poor Mr. Schwartz, who lived in 2 rooms above the fish store, who really could only give his $6, and his $6 was there, and he was ashamed. You've got to think of it from the bottom, not from the top.
Mm-hmm. It's a valid point also.
Of course it's...
Yeah. So your first approach is simply, we want to honor the people who actually did this. Keep in mind that in this case, it's not about money at all. Where's the money coming from? No, where's the money coming from? The Persians. The Persians funded it. This isn't about money. This is about who listened to Nechemiah, right, rallied to the cause, and was willing to put in the work. To a certain extent it's economic, because it means you're not going about your daily job. The fact that they're paying for the materials for the wall doesn't mean that you have food on the table at night. So there is an element of economics, I suppose, in that sense. I wonder, though, you were going to say? What? I wonder if there isn't an element of Nechemiah trying to show how this was done as a model for future efforts. In other words, Nechemiah is very into government. Like, he's an engineer. He wants to show you how he's going to get this job done, and maybe he's trying to show you, look, this is how you build the walls of Yerushalayim. You break down the job, you give these people this, and these people this, and so on, and that's the way that you'll be able to do it in the future. Professor Zerkava, yeah, for real.
Just to clarify, this is not financial, when you list the names, it wasn't financial contributions.
Correct. This is work.
This is actual work.
Yeah, these are the people who did the work. They didn't hire laborers from the Samaritans. They're actually doing it. Yeah. Right. So take a look at source number 5. I brought you Professor Zer Kavod's comment in the Da'at Mikra. He points out something interesting. He says, Yotzei Eifa, what emerges from here, is She'ikar HaMalacha Ne'esta Bidei Yoshvei Yerushalayim, that the essential work was done by the residents of Jerusalem. There will be certain other communities represented among the builders, but it's basically people who live in this area. Al Yidei Zeh Yuvan, Lama Hochlechu Rabim and Habonim Lihisnadei V'Livnos Shtei Midos. And his point, which he makes in the part that I skipped, is that there aren't a lot of people. And that's why you're going to see some of the names appear twice. They actually need to build 2 portions because you don't have enough people on it. And that, I think, strengthens the point that he wants to honor those who did it. Because it's not everybody.
These people were laborers, they were bricklayers, they were...
Or they became that.
Who supported them? during this time.
So either they have enough resources on their own. I guess the other possibility is that Nechemiah is taking some of the funds that they have provided and using it to pay them some kind of wage, for doing this. That's also possible. What we don't know is how long this took place. We aren't given a timeline. The only thing we do know is that it seems to go through the events of Nechemiah Perek Yud Aleph, chapter 11. There's a lot that's going to happen between now and then, but the wall building is still going on, I think, all along, until in Perek Yud Bet, chapter 12, there will be a dedication. But it's unclear just how long this takes. The Zakheim book, though Zakheim wants to think that they did it quickly in order to get a jump on Sanballat, so they shouldn't be able to oppose them. But it doesn't look quick, because there's a lot of back and forth, including, as we said in the beginning, military problems. So it doesn't sound like they got it done quickly. They have tried, but in practice, I don't think it worked out that way. Ralph?
How many people are we talking about?
You'll see. You shall see. So, in terms of the map, I gave you in source number 3, what I did was I went through the Da'at Mikra's description of what is where, and tried to make some sense of it in a way that would make sense without drawing a picture, because you don't want a picture that I draw. However unclear my written explanation is, that's nothing compared to what it would look like if I drew a picture. So, you're starting in the northeast corner of the original wall, and what that means is, the old city is basically a square. Right? Give or take, it's a square, maybe a little more like a parallelogram, but it's a square more or less. Imagine that square with north being up. Okay? In your northeast corner, right? Northeast, so this is like Hanukkah now. It's going to be Hanukkah tonight. So in my right, it's your left. But I'm imagining that north is up and east is this way. So in this corner is the Beis HaMikdash. And what they do is, they build further north and create a buffer zone to the north. That's where their new wall is going to be before descending along the western part of where the city had been, and then south, the same old wall, and the east, the same old wall. So in other words, you have the same square, but you've added a rectangle on the north side, covering the entire north side. You follow? We'll talk about why on the north side. We'll get to that. But that's what they did. They expanded north. So they start at Sha'ar Hatzon, the sheep gate. We'll talk about the names of the gates. But they start at the sheep gate on the northeast corner of the original wall, right near the Beis HaMikdash, right near the temple. They then work their way north. They get to Sha'ar HaDagim, the fish gate. And that is now the northeast corner of the newly expanded city, right? Because you've worked your way north and you hit the edge. Then they work their way west, Sha'ar HaYeshana, which sounds like it's the old gate, northwest corner of the old wall. So as you've gone all the way to northwest, and now you're working your way south. Then Sha'ar HaGai, which is all the way down in the southwest corner, Sha'ar HaAshpot, which is in the southeast corner. We already talked about Sha'ar HaAshpot last time when he did his survey of the city, but noted that it's not that far from today's Dung Gate. And then Sha'ar HaAyin, you're now working your way up the eastern wall. So the Sha'ar HaAyin, which is by a spring, on the southern part of the eastern wall, you work your way north. Sha'ar HaMayim, the water gate, right, which it's going to figure later in Nechemiah in a very important way. That's in the middle of the eastern wall. And then finally you get to Sha'ar HaSusim, the gate of the horses. And that is near the Beis HaMikdash. You've made your complete circuit. Clear? That's what you're trying to do. There is a picture in the Da'at Mikra, but honestly it's all in grays, and it's a very hard thing to see, and you're not going to get anything out of seeing it from there, that's for sure. But if anyone after wants to take a look, I'm happy to share.
There are many more than there are today.
Many more gates. Yes, absolutely. So Nechemiah launches this plan to expand the city north. The truth of the matter is that this area to the north was already part of the old city in some sense in the first Beis HaMikdash. We'll see they had some kind of wall there, but now it's actually going to be sanctified to a certain extent as part of the city. You follow? This is going to be dedicated and be annexed to Yerushalayim. And the question is why? Why are you expanding northward? What's the advantage?
Well, you can't attack Jerusalem from the south very easily.
Correct.
It's vulnerable.
Why can't you attack from the south?
Mountain, maybe?
It's a mountain,
That's where
right?
the troops are going to come from.
Exactly.
From that area.
Well, for two reasons.
North.
Right. In general, you have a steep climb if you're going to come to Yerushalayim from the south, the west, or the east. The north is the least steep approach to Yerushalayim, and that's one. And then the other is who lives north of Yerushalayim. The Samaritans, right? Shomron is north of Yerushalayim. So if you're going to get attacked by Sanballat and crew, that's where it's coming from. So you create a buffer zone as a means of protecting the Beis HaMikdash and protecting the established city. If you take a look on your sheet at source number 6, you find the Gemara make this observation. There are two different versions of this. One is here in the Gemara, the other one is in a Tosefta in Sanhedrin with slight variation. Abba Shaul said, Shnei beats in hayu bahar hamishcha. There were 2 beats in on the Mount of Olives. So generally speaking, beats in are swamps or meadows. That's what we're talking about. Tachtona ve'elyona. There was a lower one and there was an upper one. Tachtona niskadsha b'chol elu. The lower one was consecrated with all the rituals that the Gemara here thinks are necessary in order to consecrate land. Elyona, but the upper one, which is the one we're talking about now, lo niskadsha b'chol elu, it didn't have everything. Ela be'olei gola, shalo b'melech v'shalo be'urim v'tumim. Because it was done by those who came out of the exile, they didn't have a king, and they didn't have the breastplate of the Kohen Gadol, which brings with it an element of prophecy. So they didn't have that. So the sanctification that they do, which is going to be described in the 12th parak, is only partial. Why do they do it at all? Asks the Gemara, Lama echdisua, v'v'nei torfashal Yerushalayim haisa. Because that was the exposed, vulnerable area of Yerushalayim. V'nocha hilika veish misham. It would be easy for the city to be conquered there, so they said, we need a defense. Very practical consideration. Yeah?
Why didn't they make a new breastplate?
The new breastplate for the Kohen Gadol.
Yeah.
So it seems that they did. In other words, they had a functioning Kohen Gadol, which means you have to have all of the garments. What they didn't have was the prophetic element of it. But that's exactly what it is. Yes. What we don't have is the ability of the Kohen Gadol. Remember, if you look in Navi, in the days of the first Beis HaMikdash, all through Sefer Shmuel, they're communicating with God via the Urim V'Tumim. They ask the Kohen Gadol a question, and he goes back to God and comes back with an answer. That's gone here. That's not an option. So they may have the bling, but there's nothing else to go with it. There's no. It's not doing anything. Okay, so that's the decision to expand here. Nechemiah does not do the pep talk. Meaning, if this were Ezra, I wouldn't necessarily get all the details of how to build this thing. That I wouldn't necessarily have. But I would have Ezra giving a really good speech. Nechemiah does not give a speech. He says, okay, let's start building. That's the way that he works it. And he starts from the northeast corner. So let's take a look in Perek Gimel. We are in page 1841. And I will try to make this as painless as possible as we go through the geography. Vayakam Eliashiv HaKohen HaGadol ve'echav HaKohanim. Eliashiv the Kohen Gadol. Do we know anything about an Eliashiv who's a Kohen Gadol? Who was the Kohen Gadol as far as we knew? Yeshua ben Yotzadak, right? He was the one we had always dealt with. So we need to figure this out. How did Eliashiv become the Kohen Gadol? But Eliashiv the Kohen Gadol ve'echav HaKohanim and his brethren Kohanim. Vayivnu et Shar Hatzon, and they built up the sheep gate. Hema Kiddushuhu, they sanctified it, which is a word you will not find for any of the rest of the construction in this chapter. Vayamidu Dal Sosav, they established its doors. V'ad Migdal HaMe'ah Kiddushuhu, they sanctified it up to the Tower of the 100. Ad Migdal Chananel, to the Tower of Chananel. V'al Yado, Pasuk Bet, and at his hand, this is what Rashi was talking about, next to him, next to Eliashiv the Kohen Gadol and family, Banu Anshe Yericho, the people of Yericho built. That was very kind of them. V'al Yado, and next to them, Bana Zakur ben Imri. That's where Zakur ben Imri built. We don't know anything pretty much about Zakur ben Imri. The Dam Mikra suggests he may have been from the families of Yehuda, offers you some suggestions. So, They start off in the northeast corner by the Beis Hamikdash. That makes sense. You want to start reinforcing from the area near the temple. That's a good idea. They're also going to expand the city northward, so that makes sense. And presumably, where would the name Sheep Gate come from? Why would you name it that?
There were meadows, graves.
Why would sheep come in? Why do I have a gate for sheep?
Graves of the korbanot.
Well, for the korban, but not sheep entering. The way it worked when you brought a korban, keep in mind, you need an unblemished animal, right? And you need to make sure that you haven't used it for anything. The easiest way to do that is not to bring your own animal, right? You have people in the area, they raise animals for this purpose, and then there's a market right by the Beis Hamikdash. And the way they used to do it, as described in the Mishnah, and we have evidence of it archaeologically, is that you would go to a vendor, you would pay your money, you would get a chip. You would then take the chip over to where they store the animals, and then you would trade in the chip in order to get the animal. That's why they have these shards that they find that have written on it ram or whatever it is. That's what we're talking about. That's also why you had money changers, right? What's this whole business of money changers in the temple? Why in the world would you have them there? Not to make a good story for the Christians. The reason why is because people came from far and wide. They wanted to bring a korban. They had their local currency, so they would go in. They would go to the money changer, change their money, and then go buy the korban that they were going to bring. Okay, so presumably here was the sheep market. Yeah, that would be the reason why it's the sheep gate. You have a guard tower called the guard tower of the 100. Mikra, I think, is right when he suggests there were probably 100 people staffing it. That will be why you call it the 100. That's a good explanation. And then the guard tower of Hananel, which is interesting because that was in the first Beis Hamikdash also. We find Yirmiyahu mention Migdal Hananel when talking about a future expansion of the city. Okay, Yirmiyah Perek Lamed Aleph. So Eliashiv is the Kohen Gadol. Eliashiv is interesting. Go back to Perek Yud Pasuk Vav, please. Chapter 10, sentence 6. In Ezra, sorry. (1834). Thank you. What do you see there?
Yochanan, the son of Eliashib.
Right, Yochanan, the son of Eliashib, was the host for this big gathering to deal with intermarriage. This is a celebrity family, not to mention someone with a really big house. Right? That's what you're talking about. Now jump ahead, because here's where it gets interesting. Nechemiah Perek Yud Bet, chapter 12, sentence 10. You on page 1865. Pasuk Yud. Okay, it looks like just a list of names, right? Because that's what it is. But which names are these, right? It's Pasuk Yud. Yeshua is in the Kohen Gadol Yeshua. Holidas Yoyakim. He had a son named Yoyakim. Yoyakim Holidas Eliashiv, who in turn had Eliashiv, who in turn had Yoyada. The point being that he's the grandson of Yeshua Kohen Gadol. Eliashiv gets the role of Kohen Gadol. Keep in mind, decades have passed since Ezra, and since before Ezra, since the time of Zerubbabel, right? So this is an inherited position. And now I start to understand a little bit about what Nechemiah is doing. Zakheim offers a suggestion that I don't particularly like, but he also offers another one that I do like. Take a look at source number 7. We'll read what he has to say and then break it down. He says, Nechemiah's political acumen was evident throughout. He accorded the leading priests, foremost among them Eliashiv the high priest, their due respect by linking their task to their religious stature. Right? He says the first ones to build are going to be the Kohen Gadol and his family, the aristocracy effectively. They were the first to begin the work. And, flip the page, they were assigned to the construction of the sheep gate. Eliashiv apparently supported the construction despite also consorting with Nehemiah's enemy, Toviah. Pause reading there for a second and take a look at chapter 13, sentence 4, and you'll see what he's talking about. It is page 1869. see that? Eliashiv the Kohen is a relative of Toviah. Toviah, who we read about, the ally of Sanballat. So now let's go back to Zakheim's observation. He says, Eliashiv apparently supported the construction despite also consorting with Nechemiah's enemy Toviah. He is playing both sides. So Zakheim argues the two issues were not necessarily linked, however. Eliashiv may have disapproved of Nechemiah's policy of excluding the Samaritans. I'll explain my note in a moment. Even as he supported the reconstruction policy. First, let's go through this. The first point that Zakheim is making is by having the Kohanim do the first part, which is also the part closest to the Beis HaMikdash, he honors them and therefore gains their loyalty, which matters. That's number one. Number two, Eliashiv is close with Toviah, as noted here, and not only that, but if you look further on in chapter 13, towards the end, he's going to be close with Sanballat. So Zakheim floats the idea that maybe you could support an expansion of Yerushalayim because it's economically wise. Fundamentally, you will do better with an expanded city. More land, more you can do with it. That's the idea that Zakheim floats there. And then he makes this comment about Nechemiah excluding the Samaritans, but that was why I noted seek, because Nechemiah does not exclude the Samaritans. The Samaritans never offered to help. He says to them, you don't have a share, but he's saying you don't have a say in what we do. There was no offer from the Samaritans in Nechemiah's day. The offer was made way, way back with Zerubbabel. Unless you were to take chapter 4 and move it out of place, but even still you wouldn't be able to insert Nechemiah into the story. Unless you were to adopt the Gemara's identification of Zerubbabel with Nechemiah, but Zakheim does not. Rebecca, and then...
But wouldn't you also say that he would be supporting both economically and in terms of logistically fortification and everything? I mean,
yeah.
The way you live there, it makes sense to fortify the city and...
Right. That's a definite challenge to this view. It's not just economic here. You're enabling the defenses of the city against your relative, effectively, against family. I mean, people do that. But usually not when their family is the governor of the Shomrot. So you're right. I think that it's a dicey game that's being played here, and it's hard to think that you could support both sides. Yes? Moshe?
Yeah, I was going to note that I took a look at my Bible dictionary. And the Bible dictionary said it thinks that there were 6 different Eliashivs.
Yes, right. That if you really want a headache or a cure for insomnia, you can go back to the classes that we did on Ezra chapter 4 and the question of when it took place. There is the possibility of arguing that Ezra 4 is inserted there only as an example of Samaritan opposition, but that it occurred later, and that Zerubbabel, as the Gemara suggests, is actually Nechemiah. So Zerubbabel there is the one who rejects Samaritan cooperation, and you could say that Nechemiah is Zerubbabel, and therefore Zakheim would be correct. The problem is that Zakheim himself does not, as I recall, adopt that identification. But if he did, he would be right. Then it would all work, and the sentence would fit. Otherwise, I just think that it's a mistake. And there were other mistakes as well. This wouldn't be the only one. Okay. The people of Yericho also help, interestingly. Right? I mean, they're not that far away from Yerushalayim. They're nearby. But it's nice to see volunteering. And they sanctify the gate. What is involved in sanctifying a gate? What are you doing and why are you doing it? What does it even mean, sanctify the gate?
Not putting up a mezuzah? Because you're supposed to put a sharim.
That's not sanctifying it. What in the world is sanctifying it? So keep in mind that generally speaking, when we use the term to sanctify something, we mean we're dedicating it for a particular purpose. When we talk about consecrating this area of the city, it will be in terms of being able to eat certain karbanot there, having certain tithes there. There are rules about where you can consume them, and now this area will be kosher, so to speak, for it. And it sounds like that's what they're doing with the gate, to say the gate itself is sanctified and not just the area enclosed within. But then you have to ask yourself, why did you do it with this gate and not with any of the other gates? It's unique to this one. So that's a very strange thing to do. Take a look at Tosfot in source number 8, who offers a suggestion. He says, Abba Pisha Hayaha Davar Bali De Takala. He says, even though it led to problems, and the problems are that you don't have the means of doing proper sanctification, as we already noted in the Gemara that Tosfos is commenting on, nonetheless, they did it anyway. Hichnisua, they included the gate. Kedei sheyimsru atzmam aleim yoser sheyesh bashem kedusha. They wanted to get people to sacrifice more, to say, we're going to go out and build it. In other words, if you tell people you're building a gate, so those who are into the idea will go and build. If you tell people this is actually a holy thing, then you gain all the people who are attracted to the idea of Kedusha. Nechemiah is effectively capitalizing on holiness as a way to motivate people to get involved. To build something which is fundamentally about defense. That's the idea. You're making it something religious, and that helps to get people on board. Are we clear? Okay. Sorry?
I just said that those of us who've been involved in fundraising together, it was a good fundraiser.
Yeah, it's a great technique.
Yes, exactly.
It's a fantastic technique to use. You should take notes. Okay. So that's Sha'ar HaTzon in your northeast corner. It's being built by the Kohanim. Nechemiah trying to get them on his side, gives them the honor of first position in the construction. And then he continues. And now we are working our way further north in the extension. Pasuk Gimel, sentence 3. Ve'ez Sha'ar HaDagim, and the fish gate. Banu b'nei HaSinah. The people of Sinah, or the Sinah family, built it. We read about them in the first Aliyah. Sinah ben Binyamin. They were the people who brought wood karbanos to the Beis HaMikdash. They're from the very first wave. Hema keruhu, they gave it a roof. Vayamidu dalso sab, they set up its doors. Man ulav, its bolts. Its locks. Ubrichav, and its bolts. Everything. They furnished the entire gate. Va'al yadam echzik Meremos ben Uriah ben Hakotz. And next to them is Meremot, son of Uriah, son of Hakotz. That is a familiar name, the Hakotz family. We've talked about them before. In the end of Perek Bet, towards the end of Perek Bet, they were in the group of Kohanim who couldn't prove they were Kohanim. They got excluded. And yet in Perek Chet, we found them serving in the Beis HaMikdash. And now they're here as well. The Dam Mikra suggests that it's because there was a big Hakotz family, and there were multiple subsets. Some of the subsets had trouble with their lineage and identification; they didn't have proper documents, and others were just fine, and therefore they made it in. Va'al yadam, and next to them, Hachzik Mishulam ben Berachia ben Meshezav El. Va'al yadam echzik tzadok ben ba'anda. I'm not going to go through each name and where we might find them and who they might be. It's too much. Va'al yadam, but next to them, pasuk hey, hachaziku hatikoim. The people of Tekoa strengthened the wall. Va'adirehem lo heviu tzavaram ba'avodas adonehem. There are two very different ways to take this. Looking at the translations. Okay, someone read out what the art scroll does for the second part of that sentence. After it says the Tekoim, what does it say after that? Most people here have the art scroll in front of them. The dignitaries did not
Put out their necks.
Put out their necks to get involved in
The labor of their Lord.
the labor of their Lord. In other words, this is a slam on the Tekoan nobles.
They didn't get their hands dirty.
They didn't want to get their hands dirty. That's right. Okay, now I see a couple of people here have Sansino. Is that the same?
Yes, very close.
Okay. And then you have the JPS, Debbie?
Of course.
So what does that say? Same idea?
Prepared though that their nobles would not take upon their shoulders.
Okay. So the majority read here is that the nobles did not want to get their hands dirty. And that's the way the Rashi reads it, for that matter. The Malbim reads it that way, Mitzudat David reads it that way. That's the standard read. Interestingly, Zakkai makes an additional point. Take a look at sources 11 and 12. Then I'm going to come back to the previous two sources. Number 11 is just Rashi, who says what you've already seen. They didn't assist God's construction to build the wall of the city. Zakkai comments on it in 12 that there's an additional element here. It's not just about we don't want to get our hands dirty. It's we want to make sure Nechemiah doesn't succeed. In contrast to the destitute, ordinary townsfolk, the nobles of Tekoa had a vested interest in a politically weak Jewish leadership. and more generally in the preservation of the status quo of which they were the prime beneficiaries. So they said, it's not that we don't want to get our hands dirty, it's that we don't want to help you to succeed. That's the way that they read it. However, there is another way to read this. It all hinges on one word in this sentence. Go back to the Hebrew in Pasuk Hey. And tell me which word here is not clear. There's a word that's not clear, and there's a pronoun that's not clear. In the second half of the sentence, after Hatakoyim. Yeah, what's not clear about that? There's something here that admits of multiple translations.
The Havit Savar is a very awkward Hebrew.
Well, in general, I find the Hebrew in Nechemiah to be a little stilted as it is. That would be a turn of phrase, but Adonaihem. What can Adonaihem mean?
Their lords.
Their lords. What does that mean? Who's their lords?
But they don't say Adonaihem, they say
Adirayhem.
No, at the end of the sentence. Their Adirim, their powerful people, would not bring their necks in the service of their lords. Who are their lords? Motion.
So you could say...
no idols involved. Yeah.
Say they're superiors, and assuming they're part of the Persian apparatus.
Okay, so they're superiors, human superiors, in other words. So, right, technically speaking, you could read this as their lords or their lord. Right? If you wanted to say their lords, plural, Adonim Shelahem would be Adonaihem. And actually, it is plural. It has to be plural. Otherwise, it would be Adonam. Right? So it has to be plural. So the standard way all the commentators have taken it so far is that it refers to God, and we don't worry about the plural because we refer to God in the plural plenty of times. Yes, we are monotheists. We're just confused. Elohim being the best example of it, but the truth is various other ways as well. So the standard read is to say lords is a reference to God, and they did not want to bring their own necks into the service of God by building. However, Moshe is onto something. It could also be human lords, and the way that the Dat Mikra suggests it is rather different. He says no. The Adirim from Tekoa hold sheep, and they have shepherds. And they didn't make their shepherds serve their masters, but instead they let their shepherds work on the wall. You follow? Take a look at source number 10. Va'adirehem, and their mighty ones, the holders of great flocks. You see that? Baalei adarim gedolim. Utzirei haroim avdu eitzel ha'adirim. The young shepherds worked next to the mighty ones. Hakasuv mesaper b'shivcham shel ha'adirim. It's praising the mighty ones. Shelo heviu es savarei ha'tzirim ba'ol avodasam. They did not compel the young shepherds to serve the masters. They let them instead work on the wall. Now, there's a major weakness in this approach, right? Because the passage didn't say anything about shepherds. There was no reference to shepherds here. That would be the weakness, okay? Admit that. But at the same time, it fits because we didn't have the impression, and we will not have the impression, that the goal of Nehemiah's account is to insult anybody. Nechemiah doesn't talk at all about the people who did not participate. This would be the one time in a long list of praise that he's going to say, oh, by the way, they didn't let their shepherds work. It's consistent if we say that this is actually a positive statement, and it's meant to reflect the praise for the people of Tekoa who told their shepherds, you know what, you can take off today and you can work on the wall instead. You follow? It's all about the word Adonaihem and the pronoun of their necks. Who's there? Sorry?
It's nice, I like it.
Yeah, it's nice.
And here
Professor Zer Kavod is brilliant. Yeah.
Here he's got putting on their necks. It's a metaphor taken from a plowing ox.
Oh yeah, well that would be it, right? The yoke. Right? It's being in the putting the neck into the yoke. Right, that's for sure correct. Yes, you're right. It's an agricultural metaphor. The other point that I'll make here is just, I mentioned it in introducing it, but now we see it. You notice that many of the walls here, it says hechazik. Right? Pasuk Daled. Vayidam hechazik, and then Vayidam hechazik, and then Vayidam hechazik again. And then again in Hey. So that's where Malbim makes the comment, it's in source number 9, that Bana is a reference to when they're going to build something from scratch, as opposed to Lahachazik, to strengthen, which is where it's about reinforcing the existing walls. That's the distinction to be made. So what we have at this point, just to make sure that we're clear, because we're about to rifle through the next 6 psukim after this, is the Shar HaTzon section, starting with the Kohanim. Nechemiah showing some strategy there. Then you get to the Shar HaDagim area, the fish gate. They're not selling fish for karbanos for the Beis HaMikdash, by the way. The Dot Mikra just assumes they had a fish market there, because why else would you call it the fish gate? But they're here. They do a complete reconstruction of the gate, and everything else just needs to be reinforced from some ancient wall that was there, going back to the first Beis HaMikdash and the earlier incarnation of Yerushalayim. Okay. Now we get to Shar HaYeshana, new segment. This is the northwest corner of the old wall, and I do assume that's why it's called the Shar HaYeshana, the old gate, because it's from the old wall. So let's see what we have. Veis Shar HaYeshana Hechaziku Yoyada ben Paseach Umshulam ben Besodia. Two people, Yoyada son of Paseach, Umshulam ben Besodia. They're the ones who strengthened the old gate. Hemek Keruhu. They roofed it. Veyamidu dal Sosav. They set up its doors, Umanulav, and its locks, Ubrichav, and its bolts. So it's a really complete refurbishing of the gate. When you get down, you can call it Lahazik, but they're outfitting it entirely. Val Yadam Hachazik Malachia Hagivoni Viadon Hameronoti. Anshe Givon V'Hamitzpah. These people from Givon and from Mitzpah are working beside them. Lechisei Pachas Ever Hanahar. At the throne of the Pacha of Ever Hanahar. Now, Ever Hanahar, again, does not mean the Yarden, we assume. We assume it means the Euphrates. So the Pacha of the entire region has a seat here. That's interesting. Why does he have a seat there?
What verse are you on? I lost you.
Oh, it was Pasuk Zayin, sentence 7. Sorry, chapter 3, sentence 7. So what's the seat of the Pacha? Why does the Pacha have a seat here? So Professor Zer Kavod throws in an idea, which I thought I brought on your sheet, but I see that I did not, so I'll just say it outside, I guess. He floats two ideas. One idea is that the Pacha's job included local visits, right? Remember that we had the visit that got us into trouble with Tatnai, right? When he found that we didn't have our zoning documents to be able to build. So it could be that when he came through to judge in Yerushalayim, this is where he sat. And that's Rashi's take. Bless you. Alternatively, there was a chamber there that was built and dedicated in his honor, just to make him happy. Right? We have a chamber that's dedicated in honor of the Pacha of the region. Okay. Or in case he comes to visit. That's right. You better have a room ready. Pasuk Ches. Al Yado Echzik Uziel ben Charhaya Tzorfim. You then have Uziel ben Charhaya from the family of Tzorfim, the family of smiths. Val Yado Echzik Hananya ben Arakachim, and you've got Hananya of the Rakachim. What are Rakachim?
Well, normally it's pharmacists, but here it isn't.
So it comes from the same root.
Yeah.
Perfumers. Right, perfumers. They blend ingredients to create a perfume. So these are the perfumers. Vayazvu Yerushalayim. There's the people I want working on my wall. It'll smell nice. I don't know if it'll stand. Vayazvu Yerushalayim ad hachoma harchava. The word vayazvu is a tricky word. It does not mean to leave. They gave it strength. There are two different approaches to what this means, both coming from the word ma'aziva, which is a gutter, like you would make on a roof. So one approach is to say it's a drain. They made a drain for the roof. And that's the Da'at Mikra's approach. Rashi, though, and Metzudat David suggests that it's actually earthworks. Ma'aziva on a roof is a layer of clay. So here what they did was they bolster the wall with earth. Rashi doesn't say it here. Rashi says it on the Gemara in Sukkot Tesvav. That's where he says it. But it's, actually maybe he has it here also. Maybe it's here also. But anyways, the idea of the Vayazvu is that they bolster the wall by loading it with earth behind it. Next to them, Refaya ben Chur, the officer of half of the district of Yerushalayim. It's a divided district. And you see, here's my problem with the point that Zakkai made about Nechemiah's political acumen. If you're really crediting him with putting the Kohanim first, in order to honor them, someone who's in charge of half the district, I would think would also be first. So I'm not so convinced by the Zakkai argument that Nechemiah plotted it that way. I'm more likely to think that what he did was he put the Kohanim there because it's by the Beis HaMikdash. That would be my logic, and not the other way. All right.
He did it with his daughters, so that.
We're getting there. We're not there yet. Not there yet. Getting there. Va'al yadam hechzik Yedaya ben Charumaf. And beside them, you had Yedaya ben Charumaf. That's a name you don't hear too often. V'neged beiso, and opposite his house. So he's working on his own area. He's invested. That's a good idea. And you don't see that in general, though. Most of the areas did not say that, but there are certain areas where it's true. Okay, and then you get a very interesting statement here. Midah shenit, a second measure. Hechzik Malkia ben Charim v'Chashuv ben Pachas Moav ve'eis Migdal Hatanurim. A second measure was held by or strengthened by Malkia ben Charim Chashuv, son of Pachas Moav. Remember that we had a family, Pachas Moav, all along. We've talked about them. And Migdal Tanurim, the tower by the ovens. So, all right, there are a couple of things to say on this, and I recognize we're getting to time. So I think what I'm going to do is I'll pick up with this at this point next week. Next week I expect that we will finish up the walls and get to see the fallout afterwards. But I think what we have seen is some geography and some sense of strategy on the part of Nechemiah, and the fact that he's a builder, he's not an orator. We don't get a speech, we don't get a rally, we just get, okay, this is what we are now doing. Once again, for those who came in late, I want to make sure